It is my pleasure today to introduce you to our panelists. So I have some bios to read to you so you will know to whom you are speaking. Our first panelist is Sean Meck. Sean was born and raised in York, Pennsylvania, where he married his wife, Kathy, and they have a daughter, Christine, and a son, Adam. He has 3 grandchildren, Mason, Orrin, Evelyn, who now live in Wheeling, West Virginia. And during his spare time, he enjoys home improvement projects and spending time golfing, fishing, and sport shooting with his son. He is the manufacturing factory manager at the Caterpillar facility in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He's been with CAT for 19 years, holding a variety of manufacturing support and leadership roles at various facilities throughout the United States. His career started in York, Pennsylvania, where he was a CNC electronic technician supporting over 1 million square feet of manufacturing equipment. He was then selected as a member of the startup team that brought a manufacturing operation to Morganton, North Carolina. He eventually became the operation manager at that facility before moving on to Peoria, Illinois, to take a divisional role to implement lean manufacturing principles throughout the Advanced Components and Systems division. Sean was then given the responsibility to form the team to run a greenfield project that is now Caterpillar Axle Manufacturing Facility in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He led the team through the site selection and construction of the 1 million square foot campus that today manufactures and supplies front and rear axles for Caterpillar large mining trucks throughout the world. He holds an associate's degree in electrical engineering technology from Harrisburg Technical Institute in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and he demonstrates his commitment to education and development by not only continuing his personal educational endeavors, but he works closely with multiple local colleges to develop and promote advanced manufacturing opportunity. He is an active manufacturing advisory board member at Forsyth Tech, Davidson County Community College, and Guilford Technical Community College. His participation provides input to encourage or to enhance curriculum to meet industry's human resource needs and enable economic development. Sean, we say thank you and welcome. Our second panelist is Cameron Whitley. Cameron is an architectural design at Stitch Design Shop located here in downtown Winston-Salem. Stitch is an architectural firm that focuses on modern commercial and residential design. They have been a prominent force in the transformation of downtown Winston-Salem and the surrounding areas. He is also an adjunct instructor in the Architectural Technology Department here at Forsyth Tech. Cameron holds a history degree from North Carolina State University and went through the Architectural Technology program here at Forsyth Tech. At Stitch, he plays a vital role in all facets of the company, from project management, construction administration, 3D BIM modeling, marketing, and public relations. At Forsyth Tech, he teaches an advanced 3D modeling course. His goals at Stitch are to make his current projects his best projects, and at Forsyth Tech to see his students finish with the confidence that they are ready to deliver a highly sought-after skill in the architectural profession. Thank you, Cameron, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Our next panelist is Dr. Gloria Walters. Dr. Walters is currently a nurse scientist with Novant Health. She helps facilitate nursing research at 14 different facilities in North Carolina and Virginia. Dr. Walters spent the majority of her career, 27 years, as a critical care nurse. She also has a background in clinical education and taught in the hospital setting, doing training and professional development for 7 years. She has a bachelor's in nursing from UNC Charlotte, a master's in nurse practitioner from Texas A&M, and a PhD in nursing from UNC Greensboro. Although originally from North Carolina, Gloria has lived all over the country and is experienced as a critical care nurse in multiple states. She moved around a lot as part of a military family, which gave her and her children a love of traveling. Gloria, we're glad to have you with us today. Our next panelist is Keith Finch. Keith currently serves as the Director of Vegetation Management for the City of Winston-Salem. He oversees the mowing, landscaping, and tree maintenance on all Winston-Salem city-owned property, as well as the operation of the 2 city cemeteries. Keith received his undergraduate degree in forestry from North Carolina State University and his master's degree in public administration from Appalachian State University. He is currently a registered forester in North Carolina and South Carolina, as well as a certified arborist. Keith, we're glad you're with us today. Thank you. Our next panelist is Assistant Chief Katrina Thompson. She is a 22-year veteran of the Winston-Salem Police Department, starting her career in January of 1994, where she was elected by her peers as president of Basic Law Enforcement Training Class 34. Thompson has served in the Patrol Division, Recruiting Unit, Training Division, and the Criminal Investigation Division. She is also one of the commanders of the department's Crisis and Hostage Negotiation Team. In 2004, she was selected by the Rinalda Rotary Club to represent the city of Winston-Salem and the Winston-Salem Police Department on a group study exchange program to Mexico. She visited 12 cities in 28 days, touring various law enforcement agencies, developing personal and professional relationships, and promoting peace and goodwill. She is the president of the board of the Mental Health Association of Forsyth County and is dedicated to advancing the organization's mission of improving the quality of life for persons affected by mental illness through advocacy, education, and support services. She was one of the first Winston-Salem police officers to receive crisis intervention training. The training is provided by the Mental Health Association of Forsyth County and is developed to help first responders react appropriately to situations involving citizens experiencing mental health crisis or developmental disabilities. She earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice from Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan, and a Master's degree in Public Administration from Appalachian State University. She is a graduate of the Police Leadership Development Institute, West Point Leadership Program, and the FBI Law Enforcement Executive Development Association, where she earned the Trilogy Award. She is also a member of the Leadership Winston-Salem Class of 2016 and is the commander of the Investigative Services Bureau, overseeing the investigation of major crimes here in Winston-Salem. Assistant Chief, we say welcome to you as well. And our last panelist is Scott Rushing. Scott Rushing is currently the Director of Research Information Systems at Wake Forest Baptist Health and has been in this position for over 17 years. He also worked as an applicant developer for Wake Forest Baptist Healthcare for over 10 years. Scott has an associate's degree in computer engineering from Forsyth Tech and a Bachelor of Science in Computer Information Systems from High Point University. Please join me in welcoming and thanking our panel for this year's discussion.
Jean, I need Dr. Jackman's. Get it. Sorry. Good morning. We'll wait 1 second. She had them pinned all together. I'm going to introduce Dr. Jackman, our keynote speaker. She was our keynote speaker. Now she's going to be our panel leader. Dr. Elena Jackman is the principal of Melange Information Services Incorporated, a college and career success management consultant firm based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She is also past president of the National Forum on Information Literacy, a national organization founded in 1989 by the American Library Association and dedicated to the widespread dissemination of information literacy philosophy at home and abroad. Dr. Jackman has also served in a variety of administrative and adjunct faculty positions in higher education, including Associate Dean of Enrollment Services, Director of Student Financial Aid, and Senior Academic Program Officer. In her work as president of the National Forum on Information Literacy, Dr. Jackman, along with the Board of Directors, promoted the National Forum on Information Literacy mission to mainstream information literacy practice. The 26-year legacy of the National Forum is rich with accomplishments and achievements. Perhaps one of the most notable is receiving the first official federal recognition of information literacy as a necessary 21st century skill set, essential for enhancing the quality of American life. And that was a result of President Obama's 2009 proclamation, October National Information Literacy Awareness Month. Dr. Jackman earned her PhD in Educational Studies from Lesley University and an EDM from Harvard Graduate School of Education and a BA in Politics from University of Massachusetts at Boston. She and her son Philip recently co-authored an ebook entitled The College Success Diet, The Insider's Guide to Educational and Career Success. Let's give her a warm welcome, Dr. Elena Jackman.
Hello, can you hear me? Is this working? Okay, I can't tell from here. Okay, why don't we get started with our panel? Let's get started. The first question that I'm going to ask, it's not on. Okay, I knew it wasn't on. Oh. The first question that I want to get started with is, in this information age, what skills will students need to acquire over the next decade to remain productive, competitive, and marketable for the changing job market? Why don't we begin? Gotta put my glasses on. Scott. My son's name is Scott. Scott, let's begin with you.
All right, thank you. You know, in this day and age, we're generating a ton of information. Without Googling it, I don't know, does anybody know what a zettabyte actually is? I didn't either. You notice I'm not raising my hand. So it's a really big number. It's apparently 1 trillion gigabytes. In 2011, we generated approximately 1.8 of those trillion gigabytes. And in 2020, I think we're projected to generate 40 zettabytes. So there's a massive amount of information that is out there. So one of the key skills that is going to be required is knowing how to find and filter through that information, how to apply it to the type of environment that you are in, and realizing when you run upon information that is actually not right, because a lot of that zettabytes of data is actually inaccurate. And so finding and developing skills to process that information, to know where to find it and know how to use it, I think is going to be critical.
Good. Katrina, next.
So with the police department, we are constantly looking for people with technical skills. And before I get started, I want to let you know, when I'm talking about the police department, I'm not just talking about sworn officers, which I think a lot of people automatically think about. But we have about 163 non-sworn employees who work in various areas of the police department. So when I'm speaking of both our sworn and our non-sworn employees. So we are constantly looking for people who are technologically savvy. That is, knowing beyond just how to get on a computer and do a Google search. I am the commander over the Investigative Services Division, and our job is to take a major crime and with puzzle pieces scattered all over the place, and through a variety of different investigative skills, we take those pieces, bring them all together, and make one big picture to tell the story of whatever the particular crime is. And to do that, it's more than just talking to people, although that's a very big part of it. You've got to know how to talk to people. And I know we're in a world of computers where we're grabbing our phones and we're texting the person sitting right next to us, and not necessarily turning around, making eye-to-eye contact and talking to people. So that is, as basic as it sounds, that is becoming a lost art. And talking to people, that's how you develop relationships. That's how you build trust. So talking to people is definitely one of them. Getting back to the more technical parts of it, knowing how to use research. a lot of you here, by the mere fact that you are students with Forsyth Tech, you have access to different types of databases and peer reviews. You know how to go on to different sites because you have access and you've been taught how to do that, and review some of the latest best practices going on in a specific field. That's something that we definitely need and would like to see in our new employees. Another thing, a lot of you may know what I'm talking about when I mention our tasers, one of the tools that we use to perform our duties. A lot of people know what a taser does, have seen it before, but what you may not know is that the taser does more than more than just a tool that we use to gain compliance. We have to follow a certain set of rules, policies that we have in place when we're using any tool in our department, particularly with the taser. And what I'll tell you about it is what we call a smart weapon, meaning it's not a taser, just a device that deploy probes and, in some people's term, shock people. That's not all that piece of equipment does. We actually get an electronic report from this smart weapon that technologically is set up to tell us what time the taser was deployed, how long the person was exposed to the taser, and how many times the trigger was pulled on it. So there is a ton of information that we get technologically from that. And that's something that, as an employee with our agency, you'll be taught, but that's something you need to know. In our non-sworn departments, we have an IT department. And so there are a lot of different reports that our IT employees are developing to help us do our jobs better. So the more connected you are, the more on top of best practices you can be, the better employee you will be for our agency. It also doesn't hurt, to have a second language also. Particularly in this community, Spanish speaking would be a great asset that kind of puts you in a position slightly over the next employee.
Keith?
I think we can all agree that information, and we have to keep up with information and technology the way it's growing. Obviously, we have to keep up with those skills and know how to look up things and do research and email. But part of the question Dr. Jackman asked was in the next 10 years. And unfortunately or fortunately, you're going to have people like myself still in the workforce in 10 years, the people that were more from the old school who just graduated college when things were changing over and technology was just beginning to take part. And so, yes, we know how to do those things, and we can do those things, but we still like some of the basic things, as was mentioned earlier, is personal communication. And I think that's one of the big things that you're going to need to continue to work on, and I mentioned that, and part of that is grammar. It's amazing when I see things that are written these days from some of the employees that I go back and look over, and it's embarrassing. And so grammar's still important. I know when you text, you use a lot of initials and that kind of thing, but personal communication, you're still going to have to talk to people. Working with the city, we deal with the residents all the time, all types of people. So personal communication is huge. That's something that you're still going to need to be able to do within the next 10 years. Grammar is important. And the other would be, I would say, personnel management. And it goes back to respect and being able to manage the people that are around you or that are under you. So I would stress those things as what I think you need to know and to be familiar with, at least within the next 10 years.
Dr. Walters?
The focus on in nursing and medicine over recent years has been based on evidence-based practice. And that just means using the best evidence out there to base our practice, to change policies and procedures, to change the things that we do. And I would think that someone coming into the workforce in medicine and nursing would need to be able to evaluate the levels of evidence. And what I mean by that is there are different levels of evidence, and you have to look at things. Probably the lowest level of evidence would be an expert opinion. That would be, someone says this is how we've always done it, and so it's always worked for us. So we want to keep doing it this way. But then you're starting getting more evidence showing studies or showing certain results, and the highest level of evidence would be good quality studies all producing the same results, and that would be evidence to change practice. So students coming out into the workforce or new employees coming into the workforce need to understand those levels of evidence and how to apply those to do best practice. And another thing is to practice with a questioning attitude. Don't do things just because we've always done them this way. We have the benefit at Nevon Health and our facilities to have the services of medical librarians that can help with lit reviews and help with a lot of different things and to help people get where they can access the evidence. But those are some of the big things. Evidence-based practice is huge, and folks coming into nursing need to be familiar with that term and know how to find that evidence and evaluate the evidence.
Cameron?
Microphone. I think one of the most valuable skills that anybody in here can have is going to be the ability to adapt with changes and how quickly things change. In my profession, and I would assume everybody's profession in here, one of the things that we say constantly and per project, and it was in my bio, was that let's make our current project our best project. What does that mean? How do you do that? And technology plays a huge part in doing that. So 5 years ago, the gold standard for drafting in architecture was AutoCAD. If any of you are familiar with architectural drafting, you know what AutoCAD is. Mm-hmm. That's every firm on the planet used it, mm-hmm. and a lot still do. So then comes, the ushering in of a new era with BIM modeling, building information technology, or BIM, building information modeling. Change the game. That's the paradigm shift. And where technology over the previous 100 years maybe took a century for new technologies to sort of take hold. Nowadays, things take a year. Things take 6 months, where what you're using today may be obsolete tomorrow. How do you bring that technology into play for your company, for your employer, that it makes their business more efficient and, quite frankly, makes them more money? That's the value of the business. And how do you make that current project their best project, whether it's through the design, whether it's completing a project quicker, better, more accurately? That's huge. It's a huge skill to have. So adaptability, I think, is one of those things in the next 10 years that you will have to have on a week-to-week, month-to-month, day-to-day, year-to-year basis. I think I got those out of order, but.
Sean?
First of all, I can't believe everything on the internet is not true. I'm still looking for the aliens that they told me landed 5 years ago.
That's in Utah.
Exactly. All good points, so I don't want to just say the same thing that's been said. I want to go to the next step about the internet, the information. We all know there's quite a bit of information out there. I want to put action to it. So what do you do with it? So speaking to the manufacturing people, and I'm sure it fits for all other fields that are up here, in manufacturing, machining changes, engineering changes, techniques, technologies change. And where we find specifically to keep up with that is the manufacturers that make the tooling, make the work holding, make the fixturing, and how they design. They are very open with what they do. So how do you get that information? Go find seminars. Manufacturers put on seminars and teaching clinics all the time. So when you're on the internet looking for the technology, put action to it. Find out, how can I go see what's going on there. The other thing is they have machine tool shows. They're national shows all over the country. This is where all manufacturers, tooling, machines, robotics, they actually demonstrate the technologies. So get out there, interact, see what they're doing to keep up with the technology. That is the best way to put action to what you're seeing on the internet. Go find out, go seek to understand. So again, put action to what you're reading on the internet, and I still think everything is true on the internet, by the way.
In your dreams. No. I cracked my own self up. How do you expect your employees to keep up with the changing nature and volume of information in order to remain competitive? I'm going to bounce around, and I'm going to make sure. And if I miss somebody, just stick that hand up and say, I got contribution here, contribution here. Let's start with Keith. Want me to read that question again?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay. How do you expect your employees to keep up with the changing nature and volume of information in order to remain competitive?
I think with the city, there's different levels. We have different levels of employees who don't care to know anything. We have some all the way up to degreed employees. A lot of that is left on their own. There's basic ways we try to keep them informed of things. It may be as simple bulletin boards. It may be handouts. Everybody now in the city, whether you're a maintenance worker on up, has an email account. And, you know, it used to be you would try to make sure everybody had things and kept people by the hand. You're getting less and less of that. So now it's more expected that you know what's going on. You keep up with it. With the city, we have an intranet and internet site. So the intranet has everything related to employees that you need to know, and it's posted there. So used to be all that information was handed out. We don't do that any longer. It's rare. We may mention it, but you're expected, and I think that's what you're going to find, is you're expected to keep up with the information yourself. And the city, we provide avenues to do that, but we no longer hold your hand and take you over to the site and show it to you. So that's going to be something I think that you're going to see changing as well. And we always do in-house training. You know, that's big. The city's big on doing that, and I'm sure y'all have that here as well. So those are just a few ways.
Okay, Katrina?
So with our organization, just like Keith was just saying, we all have, all employees have an internet account, an email account, and access to the emails. We are all expected to read and stay on top of our emails, and some of that information contained in the email provide useful information for operational functions that will go on later on that day or later on in the week or perhaps even later on in the month. Because we have over 700 employees with our department, 569 being sworn, our chief can't personally speak to everyone. And so email is a very effective way to keep everybody connected. Most of our supervisors and then some employees in some specialized units will have access to a city-issued cell phone, which also is connected to email. Some are not. But some are, particularly those with the supervisors, have access to email. So you're given tasks through those emails as well. So the expectation is that you will read your emails and follow what's going on operationally in the department. We still ask that our employees read the newspaper to find out what's going on, or at least what is being said about what's going on. It's a very good article this morning, good in the sense that it reports in today's Winston-Salem Journal, speaking of the decrease in crime in downtown. And so, yes, the decrease in crime in downtown Winston-Salem. And so those are, again, various means and methods of keeping on top of communication. Also, or with technology and information going on within the agency, we want people to be open-minded. You heard someone say earlier today that they can't believe that you can't believe everything that you read on the internet. Well, you know, you guys are educated, and think for yourselves. Don't think that just because you read it somewhere that it's true. You've been taught how to research. Go out and research and show some validity to what you've read or what you've been told. Be able to think outside the box. That is something, you know, we get kind of painted into a box and believing that this is the only way that we could do anything because this is the way I was taught to do it and it has worked. Well, you could be kind of innovative. And again, you're being educated to do so. So share the education that you're learning here at Forsyth Tech with your respective organizations. That's what we'd like to see in our organization. And always stay on top of the modern information. Continuing education is extremely important. And be receptive to change. There is nothing constant in our organization except for change.
That reminds me of a book, Who Moved My Cheese? I just read that, reread it the other day, and I was just chuckling because it's so reflective of what society is today in terms of the resistance to change, and change is probably the only constant that you're going to face besides taxes and that other word that we say that you're going to face in life. But if you haven't read Who Moved My Cheese, it's like 90 pages, so it's a quick read. I would recommend that you put that on your own personal book list. Scott, you want to answer that question?
Similar to Keith and Katrina, I think we don't have a very rigid sort of training program at Wake Forest Baptist. There are opportunities. Within the division that I work for, we bring in a new employee and we'll pair them up with some other more senior people to help guide them along. But I think the biggest expectation is that the employee is going to have to actively participate in their professional growth. At the end of the day, the employees that get promoted the best or the fastest and take on the more complicated projects and have leadership opportunities are those who have shown interest and taken an active control in their growth. And so we do have training materials. We have contracts with online universities where you can go and take, virtual classes in various technology, from Excel to PHP programming, whatever areas are of interest that are both from a personal interest as well as from a professional interest for what works for us. But we do have annual reviews, and one of the key thing at that annual review is talking about your progress over the last year. And you have to actually complete a number of forms for this annual review process. And we also get feedback from other faculty and staff that you work with. And so that annual review process over the last 5 years has really morphed from a, hi, how you doing, what do you want to do the next year, to a very critical review of where they are, both at the professional level and also at, we measure skills like communication ability. So, that is an opportunity for us to really talk openly about where the individual is going. If they want to be considered for promotion, then there are things that they have to do, and we sort of outline those, and then we get back together. So I think that is sort of one instrument that we use. Now we're small enough that we can do it. I have about 20 folks in my shop, so it's not that difficult for me to spend an hour and a half with each one of them. And others here probably have larger staff, and that may or may not be something that can be done. The other thing that I think works for us is the fact that we do have about 13 application developers. And so when you're working in that team environment, we find that a lot of people don't want to be thought of as the one who is the newer person, the less skilled, and is doing sort of the entry-level tasks. So we sort of see everyone challenge themselves because they want to contribute and they want to learn how to do what the more senior people are doing. And so I'll come back to this idea that you have to have sort of an active participation in your own growth. If you don't, you're probably not going to excel at the firm, and you probably, if we have a round of layoffs, will be one of the first ones considered for layoff. I mean, it's just practically, in today's market, I need folks who are engaged, who are active, who are versatile. And so those are big qualities that we look for.
Okay, Dr. Walters.
At Novant Health, we have thousands of nurses that are employed across the system, and the department I work in is clinical education, and our job is to get the information out to nurses in a timely manner of policy and procedure changes, any kind of regulatory new rules and regulations that we need to adhere to. And a real innovative thing in our department is several of the nurses, several of the clinical practice specialists have gotten together, and they do a online computer-based module called First to Know. And basically it comes out every month and has all the new stuff in it. It's the stuff that you really need to review. And it goes out to thousands of nurses every month, and so that they know what's going on in policy and procedure changes, anything that's going on with that. Another thing is email is very, very important. The leaders send out emails. There's lots of information out there about things that are going on within the system. Novant Health also has something called Code Outlook. And that just means when you hear Code Outlook, it means you need to go check your email because something's coming out right now. So, there's a lot of, real-time stuff going on, and then there's also planned things, push-outs of information that goes on. And we do hold employees responsible for the new information that comes out, but we do facilitate it because we do answer to a lot of regulatory agencies that we have to get it out there. And it's, it's not... We are more formal in getting the information out, but we do encourage folks. We want people to go out and find out what's going on in their field. We encourage membership in professional organizations and national certification because we think that is professionalism, and it also keeps people abreast of what's going on in their field. And that's kind of it's on the employee, but it's also our job to get the information out there as well, so that they can practice with the best information that's out there.
Cameron.
So, kind of, I liked what Sean said earlier with take action. It's all about action. It's all about you participating in this. And one of the first things you've done by taking action, you're here, you're in school, you're a student. And not to discount your time here. I had a conversation with, I would call him a mentor, who's here, sitting here in the architectural technology department. We talked a lot, but one of the things that came up, and this phrase that I love, is everything is everything. It's also a Lauryn Hill song. That's a really good song. But everything is everything. So while you're in school, there's you have this chance to learn so much about the field you want to go in, and not to discount that information. Everything that you're learning is going to be everything when you get out into the field. And when you're out in the field, like everybody up here said, it's on you. You know, it's on you. Your responsibility to, whether it's studying building codes at 12 o'clock at night so that you don't have to do it on your employer's time, but you have to take action, like Sean said. You have to be a vibrant part of adapting and learning what's going to make you successful, and it starts here.
Sean.
What he said. I don't want to belabor the answer, because really my answer is the same as I gave earlier. Again, action. But specifically for the manufacturing people here, we hire machinists, welders, electronic and mechanical maintenance repair technicians. So they're skills and crafts that we hire. So I guess what I would say is, again, as you're searching for information on the internet, put action to what you see. Go seek to understand from the people who come up with the technology. Find the avenues of where you can sit down and sit with the people that truly understand the new techniques, the new technologies, and really, again, take it upon yourself to go find it. And the other thing that we see is machining and welding and electronics, they fundamentally really don't change a great deal. It's that front-end software for you to interact with the machines and the diagnostics. Those are the things that change. So again, seek to find those new technologies, those new softwares, see where the manufacturing world is going, and try to get in front of that curve, get out there and just find the people that can to bring you along. And don't ever overlook the resource that you're probably working beside. And that goes back to that interaction. Interact with your teammates. There's people that you're probably working beside that probably know quite a bit. So open up that social skill to interact with many people that, again, that you run into every day. Tap into their knowledge, and they can really help you along the way as well.
Okay. Cameron, what surprises you most about what new employees or recent graduates don't know? Do you see recurring skills gaps? Now, what surprises you most?
Surprised me is scary to go first because you don't have time to think about your answer. So, yeah, exactly. There can sometimes be that disconnect to be able to discern what is relevant information, what is not relevant information. In our field, there's so many avenues that you have to navigate, starting from a new building, or let's say you're starting with an old building, an old renovation, and this will just be sort of an example. For different code evaluations, are you going to use the rehab code? Are you going to use the North Carolina building code? Do you need to use the North Carolina energy code if it is rehab code? There's so many little zigs and zags that you have to be familiar with, and you have to be able to navigate, and you have to be able to reasonably determine if this applies to your project, if it does not apply to your project. And again, it comes down to the bottom line of your client's budget and your business's mission and ability to generate money to continue doing what you love to do or want to do. And if you do that efficiently, you're going to make more money. You're going to make your client happier. If you've determined that, well, we're going to use North Carolina Building Code, then 6 weeks down the road, you've been using this code when you could have been using the rehab code, saved your client money and time. That's a huge deal. And to be able to search that in every facet, that's just one example, but multiple facets. Where you have to be able to discern. We see a lack of that, and we've recently seen a lack of that with students from major universities that just did not have that skill, and they're let go. They're gone. So it's very important to make that ability in the forefront, and not discount that, along with all the other stuff that you guys have to learn and know. So it's daunting, but
It is daunting. It's very daunting. Dr. Walters?
I think what surprises me most is something Cameron said earlier, that learning is lifelong, and I think when people get out of school and they come into the job site, they think, well, okay, I already know, what I need to do, and they don't realize that you're still going to have to study, you're still going to have to learn about what you're doing, and it's never ending. It never ends. You've still going to have to study. I think one of the biggest challenges that new nurses come into the profession is time management. And that comes with time. Comes with experience. And that is a big source of frustration for the new nurse and for experienced nurses that are working alongside. So we have to realize that that's just going to come with experience. You're going to have to do some studying at night because if you have things that come up that you don't understand, or a new disease or a new treatment, you're going to have to do some research. I remember when I first started in critical care, I would go home and read every night on different things that came about in the clinical setting. And of course, it was fascinating. But one of the things is you're still going to have to study as long as you're in the workforce. As fast as things are changing, you're going to have to go, and you're still going to have to study to be the best professional you can be in whatever field you're in.
Good. Keith?
Dr. Walters brought up a good point. If you're going to keep moving forward, you have to keep learning. So don't think once you get a position that you can stop. And you can if you want to. You just won't advance. That's up to you. But a few things that I've noticed back to more of the basics with new employees and new graduates. One is interview skills and the lack of a lot of them. When you go into an interview, you have 45 minutes to sell yourself. And if you don't do a good job, nowadays, there's some positions we'd have had 3 or 4 people applying for. Now we have 50 or 60. And the importance of those interview skills are huge. That first impression is large, and a lot of people don't take advantage of that. So you need to really consider your interview skills. And the other is research of not only the company, but the position. It's not so important for us that you would research the city of Winston-Salem, but you need to know what you're applying for, and you need to have an idea what that job is, what it entails. You'd be surprised at some of the answers and questions we get that have nothing to do with the position someone's applying for. So that's huge. And again, as I mentioned earlier, communication skills, the lack of oral and written skills, it seems like it's getting worse. So those are some of the issues that I've noticed.
Katrina?
I'm going to have to kind of piggyback off Dr. Walters and also Keith in that basically when you're applying for a job, know something about that organization before you go in for the interview. So you want to know what the job's main mission is, what the organization's mission is. You don't have to be able to recite it word for word, though it would be impressive if you can go into the interview and know it. But at least have an idea of what that organization is about. The last thing you want to do is to be sitting before an oral board panel and be asked something very basic, like, what do you think the main job of a police officer is? And you got to be able to come out with more than just to help people. So you need to know what are the functions, what are the expectations, what that particular organization stand for. And you want to be able to, again, tell the interviewers how you will add to their organization, what skills you bring to the table that will take their organization to the next level. And tell them just like that. Believe in yourself, and if you project your own belief in yourself, they'll get it. But it's amazing at how people come in and they're timid, I guess assuming that because you may have submitted a resume that the interviewers know you, and they don't. Not only do they want you in that 45 minutes that Keith was mentioning that you have to interview to sell yourself, but they also want you to tell them how you are going to take them as an organization to the next level. So we want you to definitely be prepared and not surprise the organization you're seeking to work for by coming in and not knowing anything about them.
Scott?
Yes, so I think echoing some of the comments that were just said, you know, if you come into an interview with our group, it's going to be less honestly about your technical abilities. I mean, we care about your being able to work with certain technologies, but throughout the day-long interview process or half-a-day interview process, you're going to meet with about 8 different individuals. And a lot of our decision is going to be based off those interpersonal skills. So your ability to communicate effectively, your ability to ask intelligent questions, as was already said by Katrina, you know, understanding who we are and what we do. If you've just applied for an entry-level position and don't know anything about who we are, you're not going to stand out in that applicant pool, as I think Keith said earlier, of 30 or 40 people applying for the same job. So I think you have to ask intelligent questions, and that's one of the things that I think I don't see a lot during that process. The interpersonal skills are critical. Written skills, we all communicate through email. It is just a fact of life today. And so if you write novels in an email, no one is going to actually read that email. So that was a very poor attempt at effective communication. So we talk about those types of things. We also talk somewhat about vocabulary, and by that I don't mean sort of grammar vocabulary, but in our industry we talk about our vocabulary because we have people who come in from other aptitudes. We have people who come in from business. We have people who come in from graphics arts. And so your ability to sort of understand and communicate through that vocabulary is important. You know, so that's sort of some ideas from the sort of interpersonal. On the technical side, we deal a lot with data, and it's amazing how many people don't really understand what to do with data or how to qualify data. So in our work, because we do clinical research where I am, the integrity of the data is critical. And so knowing how to put constraints around data or validate data or how to test, that's another thing that we don't see a lot of folks coming out that have some basic comprehension of, well, I just did this Excel formula and I'm sure it works because the person on the internet said this was the way to write this formula. You know, so you have to be able to do those types of things. And one last sort of thought, I don't know if there are senior projects anymore. When I came through college, we had to do a senior project, and I sat back there and like probably many of you students thought, why am I having to do this? This is so frustrating. I have to go out into industry and find a business to partner with. I have to meet with them. I have to figure out what they need, and I have to build something. And I have to meet with them more times. And looking back now, I think, you know, wow, those were all things that I have to do today. I go to meetings, I communicate, I listen, and I turn what I'm hearing into a product that I then have to test and somebody has to use. And so while I imagine if you still have to do them, you think it's a waste of time, it's really not. Eventually, you'll be on this side thinking, now I see where all that fit into place.
Last but not least, Sean.
I agree with all the gaps that have been brought up. I see them as well. But I want to summarize back to a comment I made about social interaction. When you're on an interview, again, 40 minutes, 30 people, you're looking for a differentiator. You got to make a decision, the best decision that you can with the data that you have, which is really the output of the resume and the interview. So all these things are very important that the panel speaks to. I like to summarize it as a indicator of attitude. I'm sure you've heard aptitude, attitude, give me attitude, I can build aptitude. This is an indicator that I use. If someone comes in and doesn't know the company, doesn't know the job, that to me is an indicator of that person's attitude. Because I need someone with an attitude that they are passionate about what they do. They come to work every day, believe it or not. That's a tough thing sometimes to get people to come to work. But someone with a good attitude, I don't have to worry about disciplinary issues in the future. Someone with that attitude will actively go out and try to find opportunities to improve themselves. That attitude is the person that will work with others to learn from, and then once they learn, maybe teach others. That's that team concept. That attitude is absolutely the most important thing that I personally look for when I'm hiring people. Because again, aptitude, you went to school. You've learned a lot. You've got aptitude. Just to get that degree means you have a level of aptitude. To teach attitude is very, very difficult. So that, to me, with what you've heard here, I totally agree with, but I summarize that as an indicator of attitude, and to me, attitude is the number one thing that I need in an employee because I can help them on the technical side going forward. So, very good points.
Okay, let's move to the other side of that coin. And at your company or in your field, what are the most common reasons that new employees, it says here, are fired, but I like to use let go. Okay, I'll let go from their jobs. And why don't we begin with Dr. Walters?
I think, going on what Sean just said, attendance is very important. You have to go to work. It's kind of expected, but that is one of the bigger, tardiness and calling in are big problems, and employers don't tend to like that very much, and that's one of the big things that people do lose their jobs about is attendance. Customer service, behaviors, that's another big one. If you have a lot of interactions that are not pleasant, it tends to, we have customers and we want to please our customers, and if you exhibit behaviors that are not pleasing in a lot of different, in different occasions, then you might be asked to go find success elsewhere. Also, just another note, in the healthcare field, privacy is huge. And so I just want to make a comment about HIPAA. I don't know if you know what HIPAA is, but it's privacy laws that protect patients, protect patient health information. And it is just not tolerated at all to reveal any kind of personal health information on patients. With that being said, social media, be careful what you say on social media. People have lost jobs because of things they've posted on social media regarding their workplace. And just an example, a very innocent thing, there was a nurse that was working in the nursery, posted a picture, "This is why I love my job," took a picture of a baby. Lost their job because you can't do that. Even though great nurse, very innocent, "This is why I love my job," shows a picture of a baby, you can't do that. You can't post pictures of patients. Even if the mother of the baby says, "Here, take a picture of my baby, share it," whatever, you can't do that. So just be aware if you go into the healthcare field or any field, I'm sure there are you really need to pay close attention to your social media because employers see it. You don't ever want to make your employer look bad by posting things that are not, they will not be seen in a good light. So those are the big ones that we really see, attendance, behaviors, and HIPAA violations, talking about patients with folks that don't have any need to know that information.
Let me just add a little twist onto that question for the rest of you. But Dr. Walters, you can answer it. Is there a probationary period attached to new hires?
There is a 90-day probationary period, which at the end of your 90 days, then you have a meeting, and during the 90-day probationary period, they are evaluating whether the job works for you and you work for the job. And so that is at Nevon Health. That is
So within healthcare, there usually is
They're usually every place I've ever been. And
It's been a probationary
It's been a probationary period
Right.
of 90 days, and within that 90 days,
to see if I like you, you like me,
Right,
do I have
whether
the
it's gonna work out.
skills,
Right.
or should I look elsewhere?
And I will say that usually when I have been involved with action plans during those 90 days, the employer does give people every opportunity to correct behaviors that are, or, we will
Questionable.
we will work with you. Yes,
Right,
it's
right.
not, it's everywhere I have ever worked, and Nevon Health included, there every opportunity is given to try to work with people and correct behaviors or, work with you.
Okay, good. Keith, you want to answer that question with that little caveat I threw in there?
Sure. It's hard to lose your job with the city of Winston-Salem. You have to work at it. It takes a lot of effort. It can be done, and it's been done. I've had to let a number of people go, but you really have to deserve it. The probationary period, it used to be 6 months, and then they stopped it. Now they've started it again. So there is a 6-month probationary period. So with that said, the biggest reason for losing your job would be attendance. The city has so many ways to keep your job, but there's some, just because it's a good reason or a good excuse in your mind doesn't mean it is for your supervisor. So attendance is huge. As Dr. Walters said, that's one of the big reasons. Lack of necessary skills. You can lie your way through an interview, but generally during 6 months, it's going to show whether you can actually operate the equipment, whether you know anything about your field. That stuff's going to eventually show up. So that's pretty obvious. Another, as far as technology goes, is using too much technology on the job. And by that, I mean using your phone while you're supposed to be working. That is something the city's cut down on a lot. So that's one way to get the attention of your supervisor. And then lack of work ethics, I would probably say, would be the other. And that's just being lazy. And that shows, there's always some weird cases where you get caught, in the drug test, you get caught for drugs, stuff like that. But we all know that, that'll get anybody fired. But I'd say the work ethics is probably the last reason. Just being lazy and not caring.
Okay, Katrina?
So I work for the city, just like Keith, and as he mentioned, it's not the easiest thing in the world to lose your job with the city. However, I will say with the police department, we're a little bit different in the sense that, performance issues. Unsatisfactory performance will get you terminated. We will separate you. And the reason is, now, we give you chances. We do remedial training. When you come on with the police department, now I'm talking as a sworn officer. You come on with the police department, you go through a police academy that's 28 weeks, and you're given training in everything from driving to constitutional law. And everything in between. So you are very, very well trained when you complete your 28 weeks. And then we graduate you, swear you in as a sworn officer with the state of North Carolina, and then put you with a field training officer for another basically 3 months. So you're good and trained then. And at that point, then you're released to go on your own. Throughout all of this, you're being evaluated. And so you've got to meet the requirements of those evaluations. So there are some people who actually complete their 28 weeks of rookie school and go through everything there. They're sworn in as police officers, get to field training, and they just can't cut it. For whatever reason, they can't do the job. And, of course, that's very well documented. Remedial training, you're giving the opportunity to go back through. But at the end of the day, you've got to come out here and got to be able to do what the public trusts you to do, what the department expects you to do. And if you can't, then we will have to separate you. So that's one way. Also, veteran officers start shortcutting. We can't afford to take shortcuts. Our job, number one, we have, as a department or organization, we are constantly working on improving and strengthening our public trust and confidence. And so we can't allow one or two people to damage the reputation of the whole agency. We just can't do it, and we won't do it. Because the public trusts us to do what we're supposed to do, we're expecting and holding all of our employees accountable for doing that. And so when we take shortcuts, people's lives are drastically affected. We have the power to take someone's liberty and someone's life. And if you're put in that position and that happens, you better do it right. That's the expectation. And so if it isn't done right, of course, the least of your worries would be being separated from the agency. So we take what we do very seriously, and you've got to love and believe truly in what you're doing and who you're doing it for in order to be successful. So again, going back to work performance, that's a big one for us. And then the other thing is truthfulness. Because we're about honesty and integrity, we cannot afford for anyone to lie, to falsify a police report. None of that will be tolerated with our agency. There's no questions asked, whether you're a sworn or non-sworn employee, whether you are in rookie school, in training, or just a tenured employee. Lying will not be tolerated. And again, there's no questions asked. You will be terminated.
Thank you. Scott?
So I think much like Novant, we have a 3-month probationary period for new employees. It's a little different if you're already an employee and you're transferring to another position. But for new employees, you do have that 3-month get acquainted period. And at the end of that, if it's not the right scenario for you or right job environment, then, we part ways as friends. But hopefully the 3 months have gone well and we move you into a permanent position. Unfortunately, in the last year and a half, I've had the task of reducing our staff due to a number of sort of government cutbacks on funding. And so it's never a pleasurable thing to have to do to let someone go. I would say the biggest reasons when we do have to identify someone that an individual comes to the top of that list, the vast majority of it is them not keeping up and advancing their skill set. As I said before, we're looking for folks who are engaged, who want to be there, who are growing their skills, and who who want to participate in making our product better. And there are different levels of employees. Some are very active in doing that. Others are content with coming to work, doing the bare minimum and getting a paycheck and then going home. And unfortunately, those tend to be the ones who rise to the top of that short list when we're having to look at who we need to let go. We do not always let someone go based on total seniority within the organization. Other reasons do come into play, and a lot of that is the versatility and the flexibility and the skills, the personal skills, their dedication, all of the intangibles that you've heard us speak about today. But there are disciplinary reasons as well. Much like Katrina said, honesty, integrity in this field is important. Following the rules, not disclosing information that you're not supposed to do. So there are a number of policy-related things that come into play. If it's a performance measure, we tend to have a process through human resources by which we work through, and it involves written warnings and opportunity to improve, followed by, termination if the activity continues. But I would say the vast majority of our reductions are due to not keeping skill sets up, not being effective in working in a team environment. And our environment eventually builds to a very independent sort of work scope. So as a new employee, yes, you're going to be partnered with people who are going to help you develop and learn our business. There's a point at which that it's time for you to move on and work independently. And unfortunately, we have found in our setting that there are some people that don't thrive in that environment. And so I would say within a couple years, that becomes obvious. And so we have to make some adjustments there as well.
Okay. Let me ask, do we have any audience questions? People want to ask some questions in the audience at the moment? Getting a lot of information, huh? Okay. Cameron, you want to answer that question? We have about 5 minutes left. 5 minutes left? 5 minutes left.
Cool. Well, perfect. So I have a deadline.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good segue because everything up here, everybody said is a good way to keep your job and not be like we do a 3-month probationary period at our firm. But we are a deadline-based profession. Everything is deadlines. We have to meet those to honor our clients and honor the designs that we're doing. So everything everybody else said, but how do you meet these deadlines? How do you work at 2 o'clock in the morning and be not necessarily excited about it, but be passionate about it? And I think passion for what you do and loving what you do is one of those things that will help you stay on and help at that 90-day period for us to say, hey, we want you to stay and be a part of our firm. Passion is one of those intangible things, like Keith was talking about, that you can't measure. But back to Sean again with taking action. Take action. If there's a course that you can take to make you better at a certain skill that we need, then take it. Don't let it pass by. Those things we notice. Your employers will notice. If you're getting better, if you're becoming more efficient, if you're being an asset and being passionate about what you do, it's going to be noticed and it's going to come through in your work, and you're going to meet deadlines, whether it means you have to stay up till 4 o'clock that morning or whether it means you got it done so efficiently that you've got 2 days to not worry about it and not have to stay up late. So try to find that passion in everything. Make everything a design project is what we always say. Mm-hmm. Make everything, whether it's how you present things at a board meeting or for a client meeting, or how your project is presented on the front page of the Winston-Salem Journal. Make everything you do reflect yourself or your firm, and that will reflect your passion, and that will probably keep you employed.
Yep, being a professional is a 24/7 mindset. You should keep that in your head as you're developing and moving towards your career. Sean, you want to wrap it up?
I echo everything again that's been said prior to now. I just want to focus in on one thing in my world, and I'm sure it's in everyone else's world up here, and that is standard operating procedure, standard work. How is a process supposed to be completed? In manufacturing, we've got standard work, and that standard work, first and foremost, is in place for the safety of our individuals. We have the directions, we have the instructions, and I know I don't read instructions. That's why I'm up till 3 in the morning on Christmas Eve putting things together. But it's very important in manufacturing. And again, I'm sure it's important in everyone else's worlds as well. But again, why do people get removed? The biggest thing that I've seen in my world is safety. We cannot afford to get people hurt. More importantly, we don't have to get people hurt. So let me back up. There is standard work, there's instructions, we must follow them. We must follow them to the T. Some of the real quick detail, some of the components that we move and machine weigh 20,000 pounds. You don't get a second chance. You don't get a second chance if you do something different. Shortcuts. Shortcuts don't go well in our world. So my point there is follow instructions. Safety is number one. Again, no one has to get hurt. If we follow the instructions, no one will get hurt. And with that, I'm talking about continuous improvement. You've heard me make that comment, which means we have to be eyes wide open looking for different ways to do things, right? Mm-hmm. Well, there's a process in which you do things differently, and that is the way it's written today, we're going to do it that way because it's determined that is the best way not only for safety but quality as well. But then there's got to be a process to say, hey, I've got a better way, a better idea to do this better. That's great, but don't do it differently today. Run it through the process, get it validated before it hits that shop floor, because if you do something differently to try to prove out your idea and not go through the validation process, someone gets hurt. And 99% of the safety issues that I've seen in my career were behavioral based. Someone did something different. Rarely is it, oh, it just happened as an accident. If you boil it down to the root cause, 99% of the safety issues that I've ever seen were someone made a choice, a behavior that drove that issue. So safety is probably the number one thing that I've seen people to be removed from Caterpillar.
Thank you. Let's give our panel a round of applause, please. Great information. There's a meet and greet after, and if you want to come up and chit-chat with them and get further personalized information, you can do so. Okay, thank you.